Dapat mag-answer for your manifestation.
Hindi man na tinatanong kung kailan naman dapat. Pero sasagot. Question is addressed to the chair. Why would the members answer that?
We don't have the...
Oo naman yung pinagsasabi.
Why the chairman only speak? Di ba kami pwede salita? We are also member with just the same. Alam mo yun. Alam mo yun. Can the vice chair cannot answer your query if he has to answer? Pwede.
Pinag-uusapan namin ang chairman ang sasagot.
No, no. Not okay, sir.
Bakit magsasalita ng ganyan?
Pasensya na kasi nahuli ako nung tinawag mo ako.
The Honorable Jervil Luistro.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning to all the esteemed colleagues and our resource speakers. First of all, I just wish to make a very short manifestation on the issue earlier. This representation could not relate to the cherished and long-standing tradition because this is the first term of this representation. Nonetheless, I understand that by that tradition, we're supposed to extend parliamentary courtesy, and by which we're not supposed to raise questions on the budget of the OVP. However, Madam Chair, I wish to ask the committee if we will be always submitting to this tradition, what happens to the constitutional provision on public office is a public trust, and that we should always be accountable to the people. While this representation differ to the wisdom of the senior members, I wish to manifest that I, and I hope along with the new breed of legislators, are inclined to honor the tradition, contrary to the manifestation of the Honorable Marcoleta. However, Madam Chair, what happens if the tradition is not sufficient? What happens if the tradition is not effective? What happens if the tradition does not unite and instead it divides? Let us all remember that in all parliamentary proceedings, the majority always rule. And it is on this light that I wish to commend the chair for immediately proceeding to the division of the House. And when the committee voted for no, it has rendered the issue yes, moot and academic. And I concede to the Honorable Garin that even this representation disregard this rule. That is a manifestation, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if there's anyone in this room that is most unhappy, discouraged, or saddened by the non-attendance of our Vice President, it would be me, Madam Chair, because I'll be the one to sponsor the budget of the Office of the Vice President in the plenary. I remember, Madam Chair, 2 years ago, when I was watching the Senior Vice Chair also doing the same thing, sponsoring the budget. I told myself, even if they forced me to take on that kind of job, I would not. And look at what happened. Now I do believe that karma is real. Madam Chair, at the start of the proceeding, since last week, from the moment I was assigned this budget that I would sponsor the Office of the Vice President, I decided, Madam Chair, to sit down, listen, and just understand where the members of this committee are coming from. Basically, I want to listen to both the members and as well as the position of the proponent, in this case, the Vice President herself. I decided, Madam Chair, to keep my peace all this time because I believe that through the exchanges of the members with the responses of the Vice President, I would be able to equip with the information, the data that I need, equip me with all the necessary information and updates and inputs for me to be able to sponsor and perhaps defend, and to some extent convince the 300 plus members of this House that the budget of the office of the Vice President, as proposed by under the NEP, is valid, legitimate, and rightly so. So, Madam Chair, as we witnessed in the first committee deliberation, I felt that there's really a need for this committee to invite again the Vice President. In fact, I took the liberty, Madam Chair, of approaching the Vice President last week, immediately after the Senior Vice Chair suspended the deliberation, and after learning that there was no enough information that I gathered from the responses of our Vice President, I approached her while she was exiting the building and politely requested that, if possible, baka po pwede mag-usap ang aming opisina. And I asked her politely and courteous and with respect, and as a matter, just to be fair, she was polite and courteous when she responded. And up to now, Madam Chair, I'm still waiting for that meeting. Mr. Chair, I came from a culture that is steeped in tradition. I came from a minority Muslim community where tradition to us is not just convenience. It is a way of life. I agree, Madam Chair, that time-honored tradition of this honorable institution has a sanctity to it. However, Madam Chair, we must also remember that that tradition is born from a courtesy, from either parliamentary courtesy or inter-branch courtesy. Courtesy, Madam Chair, is given as a privilege. And as such, privilege is not given freely. It is earned. Privilege, Madam Chair, is both circumstantial and conditional, Madam Chair. But what I believe as a neophyte member of this House, what I believe, Madam Chair, is the primordial concern and duty of each and every one of us is to be truthful to the oath that we have taken and to be truthful to the duty that we have sworn to preserve, protect, exercise to the best of our ability without fear or favor. So, Madam Chair, I hope as a neophyte member of this House, I hope that we can probably proceed with this deliberation, although I am deeply saddened and feeling helpless in the coming days once the committee report will be delivered in the plenary, because I'll be the one again to sponsor and defend the budget of the office of the President. Madam Chair, before this manifestation, before the Senior Vice Chair recognized this representation to say my piece, I was listening intently to our Chairman of the Committee on Appropriations, Representative Zaldico, and I also happened to watch a clip of that video, the interview of the Vice President, and she said in that interview that part of the reasons why she did not respond to the questions asked by the members is that in her mind, only two persons actually decides the budget. Speaker and the chairman of the committee. Just to set the record straight, and this is not to side to either of the two. Madam Chair, it is unfair, to say the least, and misplaced, if you would ask me. That's a misplaced argument to put it that way, because we know that the budget is prepared by the executive branch. Before it lands on our doorstep, the executive in each agency proposes their budget to the DBCC, and thereafter they would have to defend that, and all the budgets that have been approved, many of the agencies' initial budget are not in toto reflected in the NEP that is being submitted to us, is defended by these agencies. So in terms of preparation, no member of this House is involved in the determination of the funds. When it comes to this House, it is already prepared, and it is decided by the majority of the members of the appropriation. To assign such power to two single persons is, to me, is unimaginable and unreal. This House, since 1907, according to Congressman Paulo, who is also a fellow neophyte, we always value the very simple truth in exercising the powers of the state through legislation, and that is majority decides, because that is the very basic definition of a democracy. In this case, in the budget preparation, nobody was involved. Members of this House, nobody was involved, and once it reaches this this honored institution, no person can decide on its own on how do we go about with the budget. It is the decision of the majority. It is the decision of the majority members of this House as a way of observing the very basic democratic principle. So again, Madam Chair, I hope you would wish me good luck, and I hope we can carry this over to the plenary. Maraming salamat po.
Salamat, Kong Zia. It's the Honorable Dante Marcoleta.
Salamat, Madam Chair. Pasensya na kasi nahuli ako nung tinawag mo ako, napaparating pa lang ako So anyway, nandito na po ako. So I think I can still use my time, Madam Chair.
Recognizes the Honorable Geraldine Roman.
Madam Chair, just an observation during the interpellation of our esteemed colleague, Marcoleta. I would like, Madam Chair, to remind our colleague, Mr. Marcoleta, Representative Marcoleta, that such terminology as nagtatatalon para magtanong are improper. To insinuate that my colleagues and us, who validly and willingly want to pose valid questions regarding the budget of the Office of the Vice President, is unacceptable. Hindi po kami nagtatatalon. We have valid questions. I wanted to ask valid questions, but of course nobody is here to answer them. Which brings me to my second point, that I was listening intently to the intervention of Representative Marcoleta about respect for tradition. And I agree that yes, there are traditions and courtesy is extended where courtesy is also given. And this no-show for me is not exactly what you would call a courteous gesture on the part of the Office of the Vice President. Nevertheless, Madam Chair, once more, I'd like to express my frustration that sinubukan ko lang po dumating today with certain valid questions, but wala pong tayong sasagot dito. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.